all women should be comfortable in their skin, whatever size or stage of their health they are. Actually that mindset piece is really the key to success. If you can't be happy now, you can't be happy later, right? And so I find that those are the two things, so that when the going gets a little tough, or even if there's been a measure of success, but now it's like, okay, this isn't sustainable, or I just didn't expect it to be this way, or I'm just tired, then that's when this cycle of the yo-yo starts, which is why it is so important to address mindset.
I'm your host, Kim Hines, and welcome to the Emotional Eats podcast. I'm on a mission to show you that what you consume, not just the food, affects your entire life. Midlife is different. Let's dig into the real reasons why you eat when you're not hungry and why you're not feeling well. My guests and I are going to give you doable solutions and help you let go of perfectionism, food rules, and stress to make changes that will last a lifetime. If you're ready to ditch old school diet culture and nourish your entire life, this is the show for you. Are you ready for inspiration to level up your health? I'm really excited to share Jessica Mitchell, owner of Level Up Health Coaching, with you in episode 8. Jessica helps women manage weight and disease with mindset, flexible nutrition, and exercise, along with lifestyle modification, all that work for sustainable long-term success. Jessica shares in this episode not only her health story, but how she and her family were impacted by serious health issues. She shares that health is so much more than just food and exercise. It's not just about the weight loss. It's about changing your lifestyle and habits. Her superpowers include helping her clients change their mindset. Jessica also shares misconceptions around health, and we talk about how health affects different cultures. Jessica shares some really amazing tips you won't want to miss on stress and sleep, including our favorite stress reliever, tapping or EFT. Make sure to follow Jessica at @I am_Jessica Mitchell on Instagram and grab her free download. Enjoy the episode. Hi, Jessica. Thank you for being here today.
Hey, Kim, I am happy to be here.
I appreciate that you are here because you also are helping women. And I know that in order to have a passion, in order to feel this purpose, we always have a story that leads into it. And we will be talking about all these things with health issues, with all types of women and what we are doing to help. But I'd love to know, what is your story? What led you up to this point where you decided you wanted to coach women?
Okay, Kim, I love sharing my story because I think that there are other women out there that will be able to relate. So I struggled with my weight from a teenager. My first quote unquote diet was my 9th/10th grade year. And I went on what I would call the chocolate chip cookie diet, where I just bought chocolate chip cookies out of the machine at school and a chocolate milk. And that's all I ate all day. And of course, I lost weight. I needed to lose weight. I was beyond plus sizes at that point, and my mom had spoken with me about it. Just give some attention to it. She was gentle with it. And so that's why I went that route. So by the time I graduated from high school, I was very thin, not a healthy thin. Because although I lost weight, that was, of course, reduction in calories. It wasn't the best way to go. But that put me on the path to what I call yo-yo dieting into my 20s, into my early 30s. And I tried so many different things, but it wasn't until my doctor said that it was likely that my weight was affecting my fertility, because we were trying so hard to get pregnant that it's like, okay, this is it. And so that day he told me I needed to lose at least 30 pounds. And I remember feeling very overwhelmed with that as I got on the elevator leaving his office. Turns out, though, I needed to lose 60 pounds. And that's what I lost, a little over 60 pounds. And that was almost 18 years ago. And so what I've been doing is, maintaining that. But it was that piece right there. I remember asking my health coach, what's going to make this different? Because this was the first time I had worked with a health coach. And she said, well, you're going to make this a lifestyle. Lifestyle, I hadn't even heard that with all the dieting that I had done. And then I thought, well, if you really want to do this long term, then maybe becoming a health coach will keep you accountable. That's when I became a health coach. And then one other thing, Kim, is after coaching women all of these years, especially those that have dealt with yo-yo dieting, a little over 5 years ago, my sister, who was only 40, passed away from a massive heart attack. It was contributed to, we are now aware, it was contributed to by her high blood pressure. Otherwise, she was not sick. She had battled with her weight, but she was not sick. And so, my health coaching business has taken a bit of a shift in more recent years to really focus on women's health, the importance of knowing your numbers, the importance of understanding the statistics behind women and heart health and heart disease, so that I can help any woman not have to go through that or bury a loved one at such a young age.
Wow, that's really powerful. And there are a couple points that are so amazing that you made. First of all, I'm very sorry about your sister. And it is powerful. It's powerful to understand why things happen and what we can be doing. And it's interesting how we can even be in the field and not help in that situation. And I also was really listening to you talk about in high school this feeling that we all had of the amount of food. It didn't matter what we ate, because I ate grandma's cookies, a package of 3 grandma's chocolate chip cookies. Back then, I also drank milk. I was the same way. And I was very aware from that early age, like you were, that it was what we thought was the amount of food. It wasn't necessarily the food. I'm also extremely excited to hear that you worked with a health coach and that inspired you to become a health coach. So you got firsthand the things that you needed to make this a long-term effort. But what I also love is that you trusted a health coach, because it's a new concept. If you think about it, it's really a new concept for women to let go of the traditional dieting. We can all name 5 diets right away. But the problem is we know that that's not necessarily the long term, but we still go back because we might have had a little success for a while. So I'd love to ask you too, with the women that you work with, what are you seeing as far as the health concerns, the health challenges? What are women, especially in our age group, what are we dealing with?
Oh, there's so many different things, as you know, starting with hormones. So there needs to be some conversation and education around that. And, for each woman, it's a personal decision how she decides to address hormones in and of themselves. But outside of that, any doctor would say that, really the key to even managing hormones is going to be lifestyle. And so you've got the hormone piece, then you've got the pieces of years and years of yo-yo dieting. Now, as you've gotten older, because of certain concerns with hormones, now you're also dealing with some of these chronic lifestyle diseases, which is really where my specialty is: high blood pressure, high cholesterol. There's a direct correlation between loss of estrogen and high cholesterol. And so you've got these chronic lifestyle diseases, even, adult onset type 2 diabetes, all of these things that can be managed with lifestyle. So I'm seeing that. And usually when women are coming to me, although those are major concerns that need to be addressed, at the end of the day, a lot of women still just want to lose weight. They're at that age and at this point of having tried for so many years, thinking that they should be in a different place today than they were 30 years ago when this journey started. And so that's what I'm finding, in women that approach me to try to support them.
And that's a challenge. I appreciate you bringing that up, because weight loss seems to be the goal, because our world is a very image conscious. Society is really pushing image and what we should look like in anti-aging, instead of pushing the changes that we need to be making from the inside out in order to do this. And I don't know if you feel this way, but weight loss is often the byproduct, though, of making those lifestyle changes. So it's
Yes.
backwards the way we are presenting it in society.
Mhm. And
So
I
go
really
ahead.
try to show a woman that if you start with the lifestyle, then the fringe benefit is the weight loss. So while years ago I was known as the weight loss coach, I can teach you how to lose weight. I did it, I can show you. That's not what's so important now. But if you stay the course and strive for a healthy lifestyle, the weight loss is going to come.
Exactly. I heard a phrase on another podcast that I love. When you chase the help, the body will follow.
Oh, I love that. I love
Yes. I would love to know, why are the women coming to you really struggling with seeing that and making changes? What is going on in their mind that is making it so hard for them to let go of this old traditional way and to move forward with the lifestyle changes?
That's a great question, Kim. I'm finding that there are two extremes. One is this feeling of needing to measure up with what beauty is supposed to look like, what health is supposed to look like, where it is associated with being thin. So I see that quite a bit. Then the other extreme, though, especially in dealing with certain cultures, women of color, to be more specific, is there's also this revolution of size doesn't matter. We are who we are, be comfortable in your skin. And I feel that all women should be comfortable in their skin, whatever size or stage of their health they are. Actually that mindset piece is really the key to success. If you can't be happy now, you can't be happy later, right? And so I find that those are the two things, so that when the going gets a little tough, or even if there's been a measure of success, but now it's like, okay, this isn't sustainable, or I just didn't expect it to be this way, or I'm just tired, then that's when this cycle of the yo-yo starts, which is why it is so important to address mindset.
That's so good. It reminds me of perfectionism. We want to be perfect because that's what we see when we look at other people. And especially now that we're online, when we were younger, we didn't have that. We had magazines, we had other ways of measuring up. But that perfectionism of when we don't feel like we're doing what we need to do on a certain day and just giving up the all or nothing feeling. And that's exactly what the lifestyle changes help you with, because life does get in the way. So, side question to you about that:
Mhm.
how do you handle helping a woman who falls off for a day? And, to me, I say falls off, but what I really mean is life gets in the
Yeah.
way. There's no judgment on having a day where you had to pick something a little more convenient than going home and cooking. But how do you help women to say, okay, it's all right? I'm going to move on and I'm going to start up again when I can.
Yes. And that it's, first of all, Kim, let me say, I love that you're bringing this up. Thank you, because it is so important. Because if you don't have acceptance of those times where life is lifing, as a friend of mine says, then you fall back into that all or nothing. Well, I've ruined the day, I've ruined the week, and then here we go down that rabbit hole. We're all familiar with that rabbit hole, right? And so I like to set the expectation going in, going back to perfectionism. No one does any of this perfectly. You can't do, no woman is perfect, so she can't do, and there's no perfect protocol or diet. So you can't do it perfectly. So I try to actually set the expectation of 80 to 85% of the time to make healthy choices. And then that even, it's a mindset thing. Going back to mindset, that even kind of dispels the whole cheat day thing. Because I don't, personally, I don't agree with having a cheat day. There are going to be things that come up. There are going to be certain occasions, and you're going to want to enjoy them for various reasons. No judgment, as you said. And so if you know going in that you've got a little wiggle room to make some choices. And what I'm finding when I do it that way, Kim, that on those times that a woman has that wiggle room, she still makes relatively healthy choices. It lessens the tendency to just go completely off track. And so if that does happen, it's like, hey, finish your day with a healthy choice. I don't care if it's a stalk of celery and let's just go to tomorrow. No judgment, no beating yourself up. These are things that happen. And this is what maintenance is about because there's no way that anyone's going to do any protocol 100% perfect 100% of the time for the rest of their life.
That is wonderful. Thank you for bringing up the cheat day.
Ooh.
So, cheat days are really interesting because when people have a cheat day, it kind of goes with what you're saying. They can really fall off completely. One, because they've been idolizing that meal and it's a meal, maybe it's a day, whatever it is. And it's
Mhm.
really hard to change everything back the next day. Our
Yes.
taste buds, our gut, everything has changed. And we
Mhm.
also, again, are obsessing about that food. If you know you can have something every couple days, you're not going to overindulge and you're not going to go crazy. And you'll get right back to it because there's no big climax of the week with that food. It can happen when life happens. I love that. When life is lifing, I
Yes.
think I'm going to have to steal that a little bit. I'm also really curious. You mentioned women across different cultures, and so how does culture affect our health? How does it affect us across different races? Are women feeling and dealing with things a little bit differently?
I think so. And what's so interesting about it is there are certain cultures or, say, ways of upbringing that can be associated with certain races of people. However, some of those things do cross races. So I do find that, I specifically try to speak to women of color because heart disease is still the leading cause of death among women. And women of color, Black women, Hispanic women, seem to be most affected. But really, it's all women. So if we go back to culture, for instance, certain socioeconomic factors, access to um, accurate information, access to quality health care, that's not just particular to one community. But there are variances, based on, the country that we happen to live in here. There are variances between races, but I'm finding that, all women are resonating with a lot of my content. A lot of the things that I talk about related to health because they've experienced some of those things even growing up. So just one example, there are just certain foods that are associated with certain cultures. So, for instance, in my family, my grandmother did deep fried chicken all the time and sweet potato pies and all of these different things. And many of us grew up, having collard greens made with lard. They're just so good, so slippery, so delicious. And so to ask someone to shift to maybe using smoked turkey, you can still have some of these traditions, but maybe do it a little bit differently. That could be a challenge. And then I know in talking a friend of mine who is Puerto Rican, similar situation with the rice and certain things in the culture, the spicy foods, all of that. But I learned when I moved to the quote unquote South, because I'm actually from the Midwest and I live now in Atlanta, Georgia, that the way that my grandmother cooked are the way a lot of women here cook, white and Black women. How about that? So
Absolutely.
again,
Absolutely.
I don't want to ever pigeonhole anyone just based on the color of their skin. But I would say the takeaway for me has been to, in addressing mindset, to kind of go back to upbringing and see exactly what it was. It may be different for each race, but there's always something that has affected how a woman looks at food, dieting, and body image today.
Oh, that's so good. When we connect back to our
Mhm.
childhood and we think about what food meant to us at that time, sometimes that food maybe represented family connection, the safety that we had at that time, and we keep using that food. But I also love how we connect back just even with what we knew in our knowledge, what we were brought up with, what was the norm in body image. That
Mhm.
is great. Thank you for bringing that up. I also love you said something that's really important. Socioeconomically, it's not just about having the food that's available, it's about having the information. And we've gone kind of in the opposite direction in some ways too, where there's so much over and misinformation that it's really important to have people like you who can parse out all of that for your clients, because they hear things that may or may not be true,
Exactly.
past myths or what we see on the internet. So that's really powerful. And speaking of myths, when someone that you're working with goes to get blood work and it comes back, I'm going to put in air quotes for our listeners, normal, but you know that some things are off. What do you feel about that when you're getting information? And again, this is not about the doctors or the healthcare system. I'm not going down that road, but we know that women get this information and they think, oh, everything's fine. I can just keep doing what I'm doing. Do you come across that?
Occasionally I do. The numbers can be, like you said, in air quotes, normal, but slightly elevated, when it comes to, say, cholesterol numbers or blood pressure numbers specifically. There's a lot of information about what is considered pre-diabetic. I will say that. Because there are certain protocols that a person who is quote unquote pre-diabetic or diabetic should be following. But I think all people, women, men, everyone should be, eating regular meals throughout the day, have something closer to an anti-inflammatory way of eating. I think those should be some of the givens. But what I find is that there isn't always an urgency with the doctors. I have found that with my doctors. I just happen to know what all of these numbers mean. And, I've thought about, especially in light of our conversation, why is that? Because I know that doctors are not out to hurt their patients. And as you said, this isn't about doctors or the healthcare system. But some of the doctors that I've come across personally lately have not been very healthy themselves, period.
Yes.
And I'm not going to judge that, but it becomes, I think, a matter of being disingenuous for a doctor who is not healthy to start really telling you about being healthy. The other thing is, if a doctor appears to be healthy, and maybe he or she really is, unless they start talking about lifestyle, there's not much more they can do anyway, other than recommending medication. So I am glad that at least these days I'm hearing that more physicians are going the direction of health coaches, because I think knowing that that resource is available will give them the urgency that's necessary when they're talking to their patients about their numbers.
And that's so helpful because doctors are really kind of on the reactive end. People are coming in and they've already got a situation going on. Some may have a preventative approach to them, but that is a great reason to link up with health coaches because they also don't have the time. One of my doctors literally has to see at least 25 people a day. So 18 to 25 people. And that is a lot of people to see in a day. You can't spend time on nutrition. You can't spend time on exercise unless you just happen to be someone who is given more time with your patients. So it's really important when you can have a health coach that can give you, 50 minutes to an hour to talk about all those things. So, and speaking of that, we've talked a bit about food and we can get back into that, but I'd love to know, what are some of the other lifestyle factors? Because some people listening, they really do only equate health with food and exercise. So what are the other things that we're looking at that could really be pushing us into these other zones of not feeling well, but also can be affecting our brain, affecting our body, affecting our overall health?
Okay, that's a great question, Kim. And the way that you mentioned diet and food and exercise, like those are the two things that are the end all be all for so many people. So I'm very clear with anyone that is even considering working with me. This has never been just about diet and exercise. Never. So, as we've talked about, mindset is key, changing your mindset, shifting, which may even involve, going back to past traumas. Okay. There are effective ways to do that. I'm sure we'll discuss. But then the habits, just certain lifestyle changes. One of the ones that I see makes the most impact on a person's success or lack of success is sleep. Also, stress management. To me, the two of those can go together. Then you can tack on self care. So that's why I say I have to set that expectation going in, because somebody could be scratching their head saying, well, what in the world is journaling? Or the fact that I'm only getting 5.5, 6 hours of sleep. What in the world does that have to do with my health goals? And it has everything to do with it. Hydration is another. And so these are certain habits. Now, everyone may be at different levels of how much to implement these habits. But without those changes, I don't care if you happen to be one of those perfect people that's doing everything perfectly. When it comes to diet and exercise, if you're not changing your lifestyle, your routines, literally almost your entire outlook, because when you start to shift your outlook on what health looks like and what's involved, then those habits over time will become second nature. And it's those habits to me that are really going to be the game changers in your success.
That is so good. And I'm really excited that you brought up stress and self care and sleep. That is a triangle right there that is so powerful. And we are in an overstressed society and we are under sleeping. And some people are still bragging about how they can get by without that sleep. And I think the stress is that underlying factor for the sleep
Mhm.
too. But
Yes.
you are so right. Working with people who sometimes will do all the right things, but if they're not sleeping, if they're not taking care of their stress, it cannot last forever. And it's interesting too, if we want to tie this back to blood work, I've also seen people's blood work elevated based on those other lifestyle factors too, not just the food, because stress is connected to cortisol. And,
Yes.
that's connected to spiking your blood sugar. So I love that you brought those up. Those are powerful. How do you feel about, speaking of sleep and everything going on, how do you feel about helping people develop like a morning or a night routine just to get them a little more consistent?
Those two things are actually a part of my coaching program. I mean, they have to be. And surprisingly, even the woman that understands the importance of 7 to 9 hours of sleep doesn't really have a strategy for getting there. So now this is where, again, that triangle, self care, stress management, and sleep come into play. As part of self care, I teach that you need to have a time in the evening that you generally have set for bedtime. Now, go 30 to 60 minutes before that and start that nighttime routine. But of course, that's where women say, I just don't really have time for that. I mean, the days are just so long, so busy. But by doing that, and this is what I do, and my family is quite aware of it, now that can look different for every woman. Maybe it's taking a bath. Maybe it's just your skincare routine at night when you're washing your face and brushing your teeth. But there's something that needs to be done consistently. Journaling, having a diffuser. I use a diffuser every night to help to calm myself, turning off the bright lights, getting off devices, all of those things help to settle the mind, not only for a good night's sleep, but even to help to journal the next day, should you choose to do that at night, because then your mind is free to go to sleep and not be worrying about what you're going to do the next day. So that is a non-negotiable for me, is a nighttime routine. And then as far as the morning routine, that morning meditation for me, those few minutes every day by myself to just think, pray, read, meditate, also allows the time for positive affirmation. So I encourage my clients to write down a word for the day as part of that morning routine. Write it down, think about it, however they choose to do it, and let that word be somewhat what sets the tone and rules the day. And so it's very important, because now your nighttime routine is affecting your morning routine, which is affecting your nighttime routine. And it just becomes a cycle that can be either for, not the greatest, or it can be for an amazing day.
That is great. It's amazing, that circle, the morning routine affecting the nighttime routine, affecting the morning routine. It really is a cycle. But you said something amazing that women have a really hard time with: sitting down and having the quiet alone time and feeling that they are not being selfish and that they can sit down and have that time. But I also think so many of us underestimate the power of having quiet. And like you said, just setting that word for the day, having your devotions, praying, just being still, because being in the moment is such a challenge. And at the same time, it's funny because one of my clients said, at night, my husband says he's going to go to bed, and he goes to bed.
Mhm.
I turn off all the lights, check the air, get water for us, maybe fold one more load of laundry, all these things that are on her mind. And it's just funny. I'm not making a crack on men. What I'm saying is, most women don't know how to shut themselves down. So when you said that, that's really powerful. So thank you. Okay.
So,
So let's get into how you and I met.
yes.
My wonderful, talented, and smart friend Jessica and I are in a group together, the EFT tapping method. And I'd love for you to share how you use tapping. And in an episode that's going to be coming up, episode 6, our tapping coach is actually going to be sharing about tapping. So I'd love for you to share. You can share about that, but I'd also love for you to expand also on any other stress release techniques that you like to use. And I'm just starting with tapping selfishly because that's what we share.
Right. No problem. Tapping has quickly become my favorite. I'm so, first of all, glad to have met you through that. And I've learned so much from you from the time we initially connected, because I know that you had much more experience with tapping than I did. So just to hear your experiences with clients and one-on-one and group settings has been quite inspirational, because I was a little nervous at first, months ago, when looking at how to best incorporate tapping in working with my clients, considering that up until that point, I've been using the modalities of, say, journaling, meditation for stress relief, also breath work, quite a bit of breath work. But all of these really work in tandem, which is great. But again, tapping is quickly becoming my favorite. So as far as how I'm using that, there have been two ways that I could kind of bucket how it's been helpful. One is on some of the actual behaviors that are associated with rebound, yo-yo dieting, weight cycling, some of the literal behaviors, the literal thoughts that feed into that, about, maybe related to binge eating or things of that sort, or, when it's like, someone states their goals, they know their goals. And I'm not judging, because I've been there. I said all the time, and I knew how important it was to reach certain health goals, but it was just a challenge. Back then, all those years ago, I didn't know about tapping. So it becomes easy to tap on, this craving and this love for sugar, for instance, that someone just can't get past, where it becomes more than just a physiological issue. There is something emotional and mental going on here. Tapping is so effective for that. But the other area in which I'm finding tapping to be so effective is addressing past traumas, because there are so many traumas that are related, I guess, as I mentioned earlier, related to how we view food, dieting, and body image. Now, that word trauma is also sometimes, I was going to say misused. That's not the way I want to use it. I think that trauma has sometimes been underused because of what we may associate with trauma. So we're thinking of really scary, serious things, maybe even a sexual type traumatic event that has happened to so many women, sadly. But honestly, it becomes a trauma if you were raised in a house where, say, your parents divorced when you were young, your mother became a single mom, and your memory is her rushing around and giving you TV dinners because either of money or time. So you learn this from your mom, that women are so resilient and they can push through anything. But what was in the back of your head that you forgot about was, but this is how she fed us for all of those years because that was the best that she could do. That actually becomes a trauma. And so tapping has also been so effective in going back. When a woman says, I'm trying so hard, I want this so bad, and I just can't figure out what it is. Tapping helps to bring some of those things to the surface so that those feelings can be acknowledged. And when we can acknowledge those feelings, those anxieties, then we have a much better chance of working through them versus trying to go around.
That was also a really great explanation for people who've never seen tapping of what it can actually do. That was really good because it's really hard to explain tapping sometimes without doing it with people. And it is different. It's a different technique. And some people at first find it odd and different, and it's hard to understand. But when you go through it, the release of the negative feelings, the release of those emotions, the release of the stress around that situation, you said something really powerful too about the fact that traumas are different and they're not all huge events. Some of them are those underlying things that have happened to us. And it can even come in the form of limiting beliefs and labels and the way people spoke to you that you now believe and you think is your voice, but it's not really your voice. And tapping can help release that too. And you are doing such wonderful things with your clients with tapping. And I've enjoyed learning from you too. So as we move into everything that we've talked about, I'm going to wrap it up with the words that I use, but it's
Okay.
really what you're doing. I truly believe that we have to nourish our entire lives in order to make the changes that we want to with our health and with our body inside and out. So with that said, if somebody's just getting started, what are 3 tips that you can give them to just get going on this trip? And I'm just going to tell you, one of them, we'll add 4. One of them is to hire Jessica as a health coach. But what are the other 3 that you would offer?
Oh, thank you so much for that, Kim. Well, one is going to be, number one, be open to the fact that it's not just about diet and exercise. I know that seems like an intangible tip, but it's got to start there because otherwise you will continue to be on this quest for the perfect way of trying to lose weight or address your health. And so that's the first tip. Have an open mind that you have to move past that. Then secondly, I would say, when it comes to eating and exercise, we've got to be very honest with ourselves with what is or is not healthy. There are a lot of protocols out there. And so, depending on who you talk to, they're going to try to refer you to the best way of eating. But at the end of the day, I think we know what nutritious foods are, and really trying to stay away from processed foods, having lots of green vegetables. Those are the givens where if you need a meal plan or something like that, that's fine. If you need some structure to that, that's fine. But at the end of the day, I want you to take ownership of what you know are healthy choices. And we know that cakes and cookies and ice cream all the time are not. And very similar to that is exercise, that at our ages, since, in our case, we're talking to women who are more mature in this beautiful season of midlife, that doing things the way that we did years ago doesn't work because our bodies are different. And consistency is the key to sustainability. So that brings me to my third point, which is whatever you choose to do, make sure it's sustainable. Make sure it is sustainable. And it can be when you start to incorporate habits around eating and exercise, all of these other habits that many of us don't think of. So I guess to sum that up, I would say mindset, making healthy choices, and then those behaviors, those habits, those lifestyle changes. It can sound overwhelming, I think, but it really isn't. It's just being open to the fact that beyond diet and exercise, there is life.
Those are great tips. And I think the mindset part of this is so powerful. And I know that that is something that you really focus on because changing the mind has to start before we can change the body and change those behaviors. You are such a gift, Jessica. And I'm so thankful that you shared all this information with our listeners. Where can people find you?
Well, thank you, Kim. I have enjoyed this immensely today. So you can find me on Instagram at I am_Jessica Mitchell. You can also find me on Facebook at I am Jessica Mitchell. And then my website is www.imjessicamitchell. And on all of those platforms, you are able to contact me for any questions, especially regarding anything we've discussed today, or to work with me. But that's where you'll find me.
That's great. And all of those links will be in my show notes. Is there anything else that you would like to add or anything that you have to offer to the listeners if they go out to any of your sites?
Oh, thank you. Yes, I actually have a free download that I really love for folks to start with, because even if you thought, I'd really like to explore working with her, this download gives a good kind of glimpse of how I coach, what I teach. And it is stop the dieting, and start leveling up your health. That's actually the name of the document. And it's 10 tips for success to stop dieting and level up your health. Ladies, let's stop this cycle. So I say download that, just go through the information and use those tips, not for some days, maybe even for a couple of weeks, and see if that doesn't start to make the shift in your mindset. And then, of course, if you like what you see, I offer private one-on-one coaching to my clients, very customized. As you see from today, it has to be for it to work, very customized to each woman's needs and goals.
Thank you so much, Jessica. And to our listeners, remember, nourish your entire life and give yourself grace today. I really appreciate you being here. If you resonated with this podcast, it would mean a lot to me if you'd be willing to follow or subscribe to the Emotional Eats podcast. Then you'll never miss an episode. Just go to the Emotional Eats show page on Apple, Spotify, or wherever you listen to podcasts, and tap the plus sign in the upper right-hand corner and click on it. While you're there, if you'd be willing to give me a 5-star rating and review, I would be so grateful. If you'd like to take a screenshot and share it on Instagram, just tag me at Kim Hines Health. I would love to hear your thoughts and let me know how I can support you. You can always DM me on Instagram, again, at Kim Hines Health. And just remember to nourish your life and give yourself grace today.